So let's talk about the Lumix S9 for photography. So in this episode, I'm going to share with you my own photography experiences over the last couple of months. And by the end of this video, I hope you're going to have a good insight whether this camera is suitable for you from a photographer's point of view. Now, this is not going to be a very technical review. I think there's many out there. This is really going to be photography centric, but let's first go over it. This is a full frame 24 megapixel camera released back in June 2024, and it was released for content creators, as I just said. So normally everybody talks about the video performance, and I bought it for one specific reason. You can see the episode here because of one aspect ratio which is built into this camera, which is the 65:24 aspect ratio, which is a little bit more panoramic. But since then I've shot with this camera in whatever aspect ratio is available on it. So from that point, I think I can inform you what this camera is really like. So let's first get the elephant out of the room. No, this camera doesn't have an EVF. It doesn't have a hot shoe. It doesn't have a mechanical shutter. It's a very much basic camera. There are dials on the top. On the back, you will see the Q menu, the video menu button, and that's it. So it's a very basic camera if you compare it to the other cameras in the S line, right? So the S5 series and the S1 and S1R series. It's very basic, and that's kind of nice. It has a little thumb rest built in on the back, which is also pretty nice. At least that's what I thought in the beginning, and I quickly found out I use the Sigma 24mm f3.5 lens for my 65:24 aspect ratios. And walking around London with this for a day, I really needed more grip because I didn't bring my strap and I didn't want to buy one. So I went looking, and I basically have two I bought. The first one was the lens Frotto or something. But I quickly found out that even with this small lens doesn't really give me the grip. So the grip I then bought is the Siriu, as you can see here, grip, which is serious. It gives you a nice 4-finger grip, and it makes a hell of a lot of difference in my shooting experience. Now, the downside from this is that it's less pocketable. But the upside is, and that's one of the things I noticed, once you use the actual strap handle here on the side for a simple wrist strap, I would continuously go over the dials here. And since I have this little grip, that's not the case anymore. So that's a big thing, because the grip actually holds a little side compartment here where you can actually put in any kind of strap you want to, and on the bottom there's also place for a cold shoe where you can put any kind of audio device in. So I think that's pretty good once you have it. If you don't have that, I find a strap is of course the best thing you can have, but if you want to have a wrist strap, I would definitely suggest you go this route. Features, let's talk about this. Obviously you have the built-in LUTs here, and this is one thing I can't emphasize how fantastic it is, because I really think it gives Fuji a run for its money when it comes to its film sims. There's a lot of built-in LUTs. You can easily transfer them from your mobile phone into your camera, but you can also, what I do is import my own LUTs presets from Lightroom and add them in to your camera, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And if you want to download anything, it's really flawless. If I compare it to the Sony app, the Fuji app, the Ricoh app, blows it out of the water. I think Leica Photos is decent, but it doesn't come close to what Lumix has done here. And that's a big thing. When you're on the go, it's very easy to share your photos here. It's almost flawless. It's fantastic. You can remotely control your camera. So all of those good things are there. And you can even transfer very MP4s in light mode, which means you can do films and then just transfer them to your phone. But one of the things that I use most here are the color profiles. And the color profiles are built in. And the one I use most is Light L Classic Neo, so I think it's like a Classic Neo, and I just tweak the actual settings a bit, so a little bit more contrast, a little light, a little less focus on the highlights, a little bit more on the shadows, and before you know it, you get a fantastic picture. I don't use the white balance, by the way. I also always use Kelvin between 4200 to 5500. It gives me a nice consistent output when it comes to the actual JPEGs and also the RAW, so I don't have to tweak too much afterwards to retweak the colors. Then there is the high res, and this is fantastic in this camera. Once you have your image stabilization on, it is absolutely fantastic. You can just handheld or 50 on 1/50th of a second or something, and you don't get any kind of blur into your pictures. It is one of the things I absolutely love about this camera. It's not that I'm shooting continuous high res, but sometimes there's situations for it. If you switch your image stabilization or your in-body stabilization off, you're going to get a bit of wobble, like you saw. I think it was on the S5 had that issue, but with the latest releases of these cameras, you don't. I think that's really a big selling point. Then there is one thing where people don't talk that much about here in the online community, which is the aspect ratios. Every camera has 3:2, 16:9, and 1:1. 4:3, which this camera also have, is not always there, and I love the 4:3 aspect ratio because you utilize the entire sensor. And then you have 65:24, what I call the X-Pan. You can see the episode here, very well received by all of you, so thank you very much for that. And then you have the 2:1 aspect ratio, which gives you a little bit more real estate. And the great thing is, if you shoot JPEG and RAW, you can still tweak it into your Lightroom and you don't have to manually key everything in, which is, for the ones like me who really like panoramic shots, a blessing in disguise. So now let's talk a bit about the photography experiences that I had with this. Once you have the cage on this camera, it becomes a very different experience. There's no stress on my hands anymore. A little strap will obviously do the trick, but I like my hand straps. That really made a big difference. The IBIS here, absolutely fantastic. No doubt about it, both for photography and even the video features. It's the first time I can actually handheld something. Then there is the autofocus. The autofocus here, I think, is brilliant. It's maybe not up to par to the Sony one, which is absolutely ridiculous, but this is fantastic. For photography, subject recognition, the entire screen, the way it looks, it is just spot on. And I can't recommend it too much to people here, how good the actual autofocusing is. Now, what I find for photography is that one card slot is enough. But if you're somebody who, let's say, does photography first, but still shoots a lot of video, the one card slot is maybe a bit of a bummer and a turn-off. But what this camera does is, unlike the, let's say, S5 series and S1 series, is it's a very compact package. It really is superbly compact. So I think that's the trade-off here. Wanting a smaller body, which looks a bit like a Q in terms of how its size, I think that's a trade-off. Now, the ISO handling, I shot quite a bit of low light, and I'm really surprised how clean the ISO is. And in modern cameras like these, the ISO handling in most, if not all, the cameras is just absolutely fantastic. I shoot 6400, 12,800, and with a bit of denoise, you come a far way. One other thing people don't really recommend or rave about online is the color science in Lumix cameras. I think it's absolutely brilliant, whether you have the micro four thirds or you have the full frames here. Absolutely lovely. My favorite one is the Leica Classic Neo. It gives this little dreamy look. You just punch in your Kelvins, what I said before, 4200 to 5500, or more in my case 4800 to 5500, and you get a nice consistent look over all your pictures. Lovely. Now, that said, there's three elephants in the room here. The first one is only an electronic shutter and not a mechanical one. To be very honest, for the photography I do, and if you watch the channel, you probably notice I'm more everyday kind of document your life, street travel, whatever you want to call it. It's fine. It's not focused on fast moving subjects. And so things like, the famous drumsticks going like this, if you shoot high frame rates, I haven't experienced. But if you're, for instance, into sports photography, fast-moving subjects, that could really be an issue. So I haven't really experienced it, but it's definitely there. In the ISO handling, because you have an electronic shutter, banding could come in low light. Now, I've shot quite a bit in low light, and I haven't really experienced anything with the occasional one. So it is there, but it's not a reoccurring factor. And I think it's also depending if you shoot in low light, for instance, with the type of LCDs that people have on neon signs and everything. So I think it's a mixed bag here. If you go fast shooting objects, then I would go for the S5 series or the S1 series, to be very honest, because A, you got a better grip, B, you've got 2 card slots, and C, you've got mechanical shutter, right? The lack of an EVF, I don't find it that much of an issue, because I think the screen here is decent. In my experiences, I could always see it. I personally don't like shooting like this. Yeah, so I wish they would have the hybrid LCD screen like you have on the S1R Mark II, which has just been released. That would be fantastic, but still not a showstopper. What is a showstopper here is, at least it could be, is the lack of a hot shoe. For instance, mount a flash, or you can mount a little LCD screen something, or maybe an electronic viewfinder, a loose one like you have in the Leica series, and unfortunately that option isn't there. And I thought, let's mount my phone on it via Bluetooth, and that works, but there's a bit of a lag, so I thought, well, why not make it into an HDMI monitor? And that's where I'm coming into a bit of a design thing. The doors here are on the side, which basically means that it's on the grip side, so I can't really connect something without having to have a tripod or whatever else. Yeah, so kind of a bummer. I think that if you look at this camera and you're a photographer like me who does everyday street, that kind of stuff, it's fine. When you look at the faster genres for photography, sports, wildlife, running, dogs, pets, whatever, right? Not so much. Another thing which I really noticed is being relatively new to the L mount is the lens depth. If you go to Sony or Fuji or Canon or Nikon, man, they have so many lenses you wouldn't believe it. If you look at L mount, I still feel that the L mount Alliance can do a lot more when it comes to new lens releases. Yeah, most of these lenses I've seen which are telezooms are f4, an occasional f2.8. I really feel that they can create far more value within the L mount Alliance, you know, come out with an, I don't know, an 18-55 f2.8, something like that. Yeah, not this small pancakey thing, but just a fast continuous aperture. That would be fantastic. I think this is a great camera with some flaws. I'm more than happy to accept them because for my type of photography it's okay. But if you're looking for something, let's say a little bit more advanced, a little bit more hardware, I would suggest you go for an S5 series or an S1R series or S1 series. That's it for today. Thanks for watching.